Hey, we're going to be looking at how we can use the HPCBOX platform as a fully integrated development and deployment environment for your automated HPC workflows on Microsoft Azure. We are going to be using the HPCBOX Connect app and connecting to one of our HPCBOX clusters, which is running on Microsoft Azure in the East US data center. Once you're connected to your HPCBOX cluster, you can start the HPCBOX app inside the HPC cluster. You see here that this particular cluster, for the purposes of this demo, has two older generation HPC resources on Azure, and it's also got an NVIDIA GPU-based node for doing post-processing work. If you're aware of HPCBOX, you know that you can actually drag and drop applications, and then you can just create your entire HPC pipeline, and you can work with all your applications with their fully interactive graphical interface. Now, for this particular demo, I already have an existing workflow which I've created, so I'm going to load that particular workflow here. This workflow is a reproduction of an ANSYS tutorial, and it's got two steps. The first step, we execute ANSYS Fluent on 180 CPU cores, and once ANSYS Fluent has completed its execution, we want to execute ANSYS CFD Post, which is going to look at take the ANSYS Fluent results and then perform some operations on the results and generate a report out of it. We won't be executing this workflow here, but the general idea is that once you create a workflow and once you have tested and customized it, you are able to deploy it and make it available for consumption to other users or to other systems which can talk to the HPCBOX cluster. So you have this new deploy button here. Once you click on that, you're presented with this form where you can provide details for your HPC workflow deployment. For example, you could give a name, you could give some description as to what this workflow actually does. You can also create links between the different steps in your workflow. So what this means is if you want to, for example, pass some data from one step of your workflow to the other step, you can actually create outputs in one step, and then you can link those outputs as inputs to the next step. So this way, when you're running unattended HPC workflows in an automated environment, you do not require a human in the loop to pass data between the different steps of the workflow. So your workflows can run completely autonomous, and they can exchange data between every step which is involved in the HPC pipeline. You can also include some images which give the user of the workflow a general idea as to what this workflow actually does and what it's supposed to generate. You can also include other files which are part of your workflow. For example, in this particular case, I could include an ANSYS Fluent journal file, or I could include a CFD post session file, which are part of the workflow. So once you deploy this workflow, it automatically becomes available for consumption from other systems. So in this particular demo, we are going to be using the HPCBOX web UI to consume this particular workflow. In one of the future demos, we'll see how we can link up Power Platform or some of the other workflow-based tools available on Microsoft's Fabric systems, and then plug those into these HPC box workflows, and then make sure that each of these workflows can be triggered from other external systems as well. So you have a list of all the workflows which are deployed in this particular HPCBOX environment, and we can click on this button here to see the details about a particular workflow. So in this particular workflow, it's the same steps which we saw within the remote desktop environment. It's got ANSYS Fluent as the first step, and the second step is ANSYS CFD Post. Now, as you can also see the images which were included as part of the workflow deployment. As a user who wants to consume this particular workflow, what they'll have to do is they can just upload an input file, and then they could just click on the submit button, and this is going to trigger execution of this workflow, which was created on the HPCBOX platform and which was customized and tested and made and deployed as a repeatable workflow on the system. So this way, you're sure that whatever you've created as part of your HPC pipeline on an HPCBOX cluster is going to be executing in the same environment when somebody else invokes and wants to use that particular workflow. So now that this workflow is submitted, you should be able to see it here in the list of executions, and you can also see which particular step in the workflow is currently being executed. Let's give it a few minutes to complete execution. Okay, so you can see that now this workflow has completed execution, and we should also be able to see that all the steps involved in this particular workflow are successfully executed, and you also have a link to download the results. So let's see what we have here. We get the results down here, and let's extract this. So you can see here that the input file which I had uploaded, that was used by the HPC workflow which I deployed earlier, and it executed answer CFD post, and it's also returned me a report of the result files. So what you can see here is it's pretty easy to use HPCBOX as a fully integrated development environment. You can execute your applications and your HPC pipelines in fully interactive mode in using the remote desktop Linux experience. Once you're happy with your workflows and once you've customized them, you may also choose to deploy them on using the same environment on the same HPC box cluster and make it accessible to other users and other systems for execution within your HPC box cluster. The good thing about all of this is everything can be done within your Azure environment. So you can deploy an HPC box cluster within your Azure environment, and you'll get access to this entire integrated development environment, including this web interface for executing or consuming these workflows. And this particular interface is secured by Microsoft Entra ID, which is part of your Azure tenant. So you have complete control over setting up all your compliance requirements on the HPC box cluster, and you can be sure that all the data which gets generated is within your own environment. So hopefully you enjoyed watching this video. Please let us know if you would like to see some other features, or if you have any other questions regarding this automated execution platform. And we will see you in the next video. Thanks.